At dusk, the Gothic towers of Yale University cast long shadows across the campus cobblestones. Among these shadows lies a windowless building, a somber stone mausoleum known as the Tomb. It is here, away from prying eyes, that one of America's most enigmatic secret societies, quote one, convenes. Within its massive doors, an elite is forged, one that for decades has shaped the destiny of a superpower. Presidents, senators, CIA directors, financial magnates, all have passed through these walls. What transpires behind the closed doors of this strange edifice? How did a student fraternity transform into an unspoken forge of American power? Why do only 15 chosen individuals annually receive the mysterious, quote, 2, an invitation to join the club? And is there truly a connection between the society's necro-political rituals and the subsequent careers of its members? Let us delve into the shadow of Yale's tomb to uncover the secrets that the American elite shares only with the select few. In the autumn of 1832, an event occurred within the walls of Yale University that would forever change the course of American history. William Russell, returning from a trip to Germany, was impressed by European student societies and decided to create something similar in America. Together with his classmate Alphonso Taft, they founded a fraternity, choosing an ominous symbol for it, a skull and crossbones. The era was special. The young American Republic was searching for its identity. Jacksonian democracy was expanding voter rights. The Industrial Revolution was changing the economic landscape, and the East Coast elite sought to strengthen its position. In this atmosphere, a society was born, intended to unite the future leaders of the nation. Why exactly did the skull and bones become the symbol? There are several versions. According to one, William Russell was a descendant of the famous pirate William Kidd, and the choice of emblem was a tribute to the family's maritime past. Another version connects the symbolism with Masonic traditions, reminiscent of the transience of life and the equality of all in the face of death. However, the most intriguing theory relates to the activities of, quote, Zero, the family business of the society's founder. The firm was involved in the opium trade with China, and the pirate flag, Jolly Roger, was a common symbol on maritime trade routes of that time. The original goals of the society were formulated as the development of leadership qualities and intellectual improvement. But from the very beginning, it contained an element of elitism and exclusivity. Russell and Taft selected only those who, in their opinion, were worthy of shaping America's future. A distinctive feature of, quote, 2 was the strict limitation on the number of new members, 15 people annually. This principle remains to this day. The first, quote, 3, as members of the society call themselves, came from influential New England families, the Tafts, Russells, Lords, Whitneys. Many of them were related by blood, which strengthened the group's internal solidarity. In the very heart of Yale University, at the corner of High Street and Chapel Street, stands one of America's most mysterious buildings, the headquarters of the Quote Over Society, known as Quote 1. Built in 1856, this windowless stone fortress looks like an alien body among the elegant university architecture. Its gloomy sandstone facade, done in the Neo-Grecian style, evokes associations more with an ancient mausoleum than with a university club. The massive iron doors of Quote 2 rarely open to outsiders. The building is intentionally designed to seclude its inhabitants from the outside world. The absence of windows on the ground floor is not just an architectural caprice, but a deliberate decision to ensure absolute privacy. Only on the upper level can one notice a few narrow openings more resembling the loopholes of a medieval fortress than traditional windows. The location of quote 3 is also not accidental. It is situated opposite Wetherill Hall Dormitory, allowing society members to observe the campus while remaining unnoticed. According to rumors, the interior space of the building is twice as large as one might assume from looking at it from the outside. Allegedly, there are underground floors beneath the structure, connected to the university's tunnel system. What is hidden behind these impregnable walls? According to rare testimonies from former members, the interior of the tomb resembles a Victorian Gothic mansion. The main hall, paneled in dark wood, is adorned with society emblems and portraits of prominent bone men. In the center of the room is a meeting table, where decisions are made that influence the fates of global politics and economics. But the most intriguing part of the tomb is its collection of artifacts. According to numerous accounts, the society possesses an impressive collection of human remains and historical relics. Among them is the alleged skull of Apache chief Geronimo, supposedly stolen in 1918 by a group of bone men, including Prescott Bush, father and grandfather of future U.S. presidents. Other exhibits in this grim museum include a collection of skulls and bones of famous historical figures, ancient manuscripts, and even personal belongings of Adolf Hitler, brought by American officers after World War II. Of particular value are the diaries of the society's founders and the minutes of meetings from the fraternity's almost 200-year existence. In the 2000s, Geronimo's descendants even filed a lawsuit against the quote 8 Society, demanding the return of their ancestors' remains. However, the theft could not be proven, and the case was closed. Nevertheless, this story added a mystical aura to an already mysterious organization. Every April, a mysterious ritual takes place at Yale University. At dusk, several seniors in black robes walk across campus. They approach selected junior students, tap them on the shoulder and say, "Skull and bones, you are chosen, tomorrow at 8. This famous tapping is the beginning of an initiation process that will turn ordinary students into members of one of America's most influential secret societies. The selection of candidates is a thorough and meticulous process. Current members of the society observe potential newcomers for months, evaluating their leadership qualities, academic achievements, family background, and character. The most important criterion is potential, the ability to occupy a significant position in politics, business, or culture in the future. Preference is often given to descendants of former bone men, creating a dynastic principle of succession. Upon receiving the tapping, the candidate must immediately make a decision. Rejections are rare. An invitation to skull and bones is considered the highest honor in the Yale hierarchy. Those who agree await the initiation ceremony, which begins on Bones Night, the last Thursday of April. Blindfolded, the novices are led to the tomb. Inside, in complete darkness, to the sounds of an organ and monotonous chants, they are forced to lie in a real coffin. Hooded figures with candles hover over them. The initiate must die to be reborn as a bone man. The symbolic death of the former personality is reinforced by ritual shrouding and the taking of an oath of absolute loyalty to the society. The culmination of the ceremony is the confession. The novice must reveal their deepest secrets, including details of their intimate life. This act of psychological exposure creates a powerful emotional bond between members of the society and serves as a guarantee of their future loyalty. Every bone man knows that his secrets are known to his brothers, and they know his secrets. After the initiation is complete, the novices are given secret names. Some have mythological roots, while others are playfully obscene. For example, George H.W. Bush was known as Magog, and his son as Temporary. These nicknames are used exclusively within the walls of the tomb and become part of the new identity of the Bone Man. The psychological impact of initiation rituals is hard to overstate. The combination of fear, humiliation, frankness, and subsequent acceptance creates a powerful group identity. Having experienced symbolic death and rebirth, members of the society feel special, chosen, bound by ties that transcend ordinary social relationships. In the world of elite universities, there are their own laws of selection. But nowhere does the system work as mysteriously as in the Skull and Bones Society. Every spring at Yale University, an ancient ritual known as tapping unfolds. 15 junior students receive a mysterious invitation that will change their entire lives. Why exactly 15? This number is not accidental. It provides an ideal balance between exclusivity and sufficient numbers to maintain the society's influence. In the club's almost 200 years of existence, about 3,000 people have passed through its ranks, enough to create an extensive network of influence, but not enough to dilute the organization's elitism. The selection of candidates occurs according to strictly defined criteria. Current members of the society, known as quote 1, evaluate potential newcomers based on several parameters. Academic achievements are important but not decisive. Far more important are leadership qualities, charisma, and family background. The quote 2 seek those capable of influencing others, managing the masses, and making complex decisions. The demographic profile of a typical society member has changed over time, but some characteristics remain constant. Historically, these were white Protestant men from wealthy East Coast families. Many of them came from dynasties associated with quote 3 for generations. The surnames Bush, Taft, Bundy, Whitney, Harriman regularly appear in the society's membership lists. Until 1991, women were not admitted to the society. The decision for gender integration was not made without resistance. Some conservative members even threatened to sever all ties with the organization. However, the progressive wing prevailed, and today, among the Bone Men, there is an approximately equal number of men and women. Racial diversity also slowly permeated the society's ranks. The first African Americans were admitted only in the 60s of the 20th century. Today, the ethnic composition is more diverse but still does not reflect the country's demographics as a whole. The tapping process is surrounded by mystical rituals. Current members of the society, dressed in black robes, literally tap the chosen candidate on the shoulder and utter a ritual phrase. Refusals of the invitation are extremely rare. Being chosen for Skull and Bones is considered the highest honor in the Yale hierarchy. The Bush dynasty in American politics is not just a family success story, but a vivid example of how membership in Skull and Bones can serve as a springboard to the heights of power. 3 generations of this family passed through the mysterious rituals of the Yale Society, and each of them subsequently left a significant mark on the country's history. The story begins with Prescott Bush, who was admitted to Skull and Bones in 1917. His university nickname was, quote, and it was with him that the political dynasty began. After a successful career as a banker, Prescott became a senator from Connecticut, laying the foundation for the family's future political successes. It is noteworthy that he, according to some accounts, participated in the infamous expedition to retrieve the skull of the Apache chief Geronimo for the society's collection. His son, George Herbert Walker Bush, was initiated in 1948 under the name, quote, 4 decades later, he became the 41st President of the United States. His career included leading the CIA, serving as Vice President under Ronald Reagan, and finally, the presidency. Many decisions of his administration, especially in foreign policy, were made with the participation of other, quote, "The third generation is represented by George Walker Bush, admitted to the Society in 1968 under the nickname, quote, his path to the presidential chair was no less impressive. Governor of Texas, and then the 43rd President of the United States. For the first time in American history, the son of a former president also held the highest office in the state, creating a true political dynasty. Remarkably, from 1989 to 2009, with the exception of the 4 years of Bill Clinton's presidency, the country was governed by Skull and Bones alumni. This is not just a coincidence, but a testament to the effectiveness of the network connections formed within the society. Common threads can be traced in the policies of both Bush presidents, an orientation towards military solutions to international conflicts, close ties with the oil industry and the intelligence community. Both initiated military campaigns in Iraq, which many critics associate with the interests of oil companies led by other members of Skull and Bones. The composition of the administrations of both presidents is particularly telling. Key positions were held by people connected to the society either directly or through family ties. For example, several Bone men worked in George W. Bush's team, including high-ranking national security advisors. The ties between the Skull and Bones Society and the American intelligence community are so close that it is sometimes difficult to determine where one ends and the other begins. This interconnectedness is not accidental. It has been formed over decades through a network of personal contacts and shared interests, creating a peculiar symbiosis between an elite club and state security structures. The beginning of this alliance can be traced back to the creation of the Office of Strategic Services, OSS, during World War II. William Donovan, the founder of the OSS, although not a member of the society, actively recruited Bone men into the new intelligence organization. Their education, connections, and absolute loyalty made Yale graduates ideal candidates for Secret Service. When the Central Intelligence Agency replaced the OSS in 1947, the influence of Skull and Bones only intensified. The first civilian director of the CIA, Allen Dulles, was not a member of the society, but his brother John Foster Dulles, Secretary of State under Eisenhower, maintained close ties with the Bone men. Many key Cold War operations were planned and executed with the direct involvement of graduates of the Yale fraternity. George Bush Sr., who became director of the CIA in 1976, symbolized the peak of this merger of interests. Under his leadership, the agency actively recruited new employees from among the society's members. Analytical departments, operational units, and leadership positions were filled by people who had passed through the rituals of, quote, two. It is noteworthy that many CIA operations in Latin America and the Middle East were led by Skull and Bones graduates. Their shared worldview, formed within the walls of the Yale Society, determined their approach to solving foreign policy problems. Interventions, covert operations, and government overthrows were often initiated by people who had pledged allegiance in, quote, three. The Society's role in shaping the doctrine of containing communism is particularly noticeable. Many architects of the Cold War, including McGeorge Bundy and Averell Harriman, were members of Skull and Bones. Their views on confronting the Soviet Union, the need to create military blocs, and waging psychological warfare became the basis of American foreign policy for decades. Researchers note a curious pattern. Many major U.S. geopolitical decisions were made during periods when bone men held key government positions. From the Vietnam War to the invasion of Iraq, behind each of these conflicts stood figures associated with the Yale Society. The financial might of Skull and Bones extends far beyond political offices and intelligence agencies. Wall Street and America's largest banks have become another sphere where the secret society's influence is particularly pronounced. For decades, graduates of the Yale fraternity have held key positions in financial institutions, determining the economic course not only of the U.S., but also of the global financial system. The origins of this connection trace back to the 19th century, when the families of the first bone men controlled a significant portion of the banking capital on the East Coast. Dynasties such as the Morgans, Harrimans, and Whitneys built financial empires, leveraging connections forged within the walls of the tomb. Their banks financed the railroad boom, industrialization, and the territorial expansion of the U.S. The presence of society members in major investment banks became particularly noticeable in the second half of the 20th century. Morgan Stanley, Goldman Sachs, Lehman Brothers. In each of these financial giants, key decisions were made by individuals who had undergone the rituals of the Yale fraternity. For instance, for decades, at least one bone man was always present on the board of directors of Morgan Stanley. The Federal Reserve System is another bastion of the society's influence. Several Fed chairmen had connections to, quote, "4", including Paul Volcker, whose strict monetary policy of the 1980s radically altered America's economic landscape. His decision to raise interest rates to unprecedented levels to combat inflation was supported by the network of bone men in the financial sector. The economic theories promoted by financiers from Skull and Bones reflected their elitist worldview. Most of them were proponents of free markets and minimal government regulation. They actively supported globalization and the creation of international financial institutions, where they subsequently held leadership positions. It is noteworthy that many economic crises were accompanied by coordinated actions of bone men. During the savings and loan crisis of the 1980s and the financial crisis of 2008, key decisions to rescue the economy were made in offices where graduates of the Yale Society were present. A particularly illustrative example is Stephen Schwarzman, one of the founders of the investment giant Blackstone Group. Initiated into Skull and Bones in the 1960s, he built a company managing hundreds of billions of dollars in assets. His annual meetings with other bone men became informal platforms for discussing global investment strategies. The network effect of the Skull and Bones Society is perhaps the most powerful tool of influence created over the nearly 200 years of the organization's existence. In a world where career advancement is often determined not only by talent, but also by connections, members of this brotherhood gain an unprecedented advantage. Their success is built on the unspoken principle, quote, 1. The internal solidarity of the society is based on several key mechanisms. First, there is the shared experience of initiation rituals, creating an emotional bond comparable to a military brotherhood. Second, a system of mutual obligations. By helping a fellow member, a society member can count on reciprocal support in the future. Third, the collective keeping of secrets, which guarantees loyalty. This mechanism of mutual support works at all levels. A Yale graduate who gets a job at a prestigious company will certainly pay attention to the resume of a candidate who mentions their shared alma mater. If he recognizes the secret signs of belonging to, quote, 2, the hiring decision is practically made. This is how an invisible network of influence is formed, penetrating all spheres of the American elite. The story of Henry Stimson, Secretary of War under 3 U.S. presidents, is illustrative. As a, quote, 3, he consistently promoted his fellow society members to key positions. During World War II, dozens of crucial decisions were made by people linked by the bonds of the Yale Brotherhood. The Manhattan Project, which determined the outcome of the war and the post-war world order, was overseen by a whole group of, quote, 4. In the corporate world, this mechanism works no less effectively. When in 1983, Frederick Smith, founder of FedEx and a member of, quote, 5, faced the threat of his company's bankruptcy, his brothers in the society came to his aid. Urgent financing was arranged through a network of investment banks headed by bone men. However, this system of mutual support raises serious ethical questions. Does such privileged networking not contradict the principles of American meritocracy? Can a society that proclaims equal opportunities for all tolerate the existence of elite clubs that give their members an unfair advantage? Spring 1991 marked a turning point in the history of Skull and Bones. After 159 years of the Society's existence, the doors of the, quote, 1 women for the first time. The decision, which seemed unthinkable to generations of, quote, 2, was not made without a dramatic struggle within the organization. The issue of gender equality had been brewing for a long time. Yale University began admitting women as early as 1969, but secret societies remained the last bastions of male dominance. By the early 90s, pressure from the progressive segment of the student body and university administration became unbearable. The society was faced with a choice: adapt or lose influence. The decision to admit women split the Brotherhood. The conservative wing, represented mainly by older members, threatened to completely sever ties with the organization. William Buckley, a well-known conservative commentator in, quote, 3, publicly expressed his disappointment. Some alumni even created an alternative organization, quote, 4, to preserve the traditional spirit of the Brotherhood. Despite the resistance, in April 1991, 7 women received the mysterious, quote, 5. Among them were future leaders in various fields: Catherine Cohen, who later became a successful investment banker; Sarah Sewell, who served as Undersecretary of State in the Obama administration; and Dina Powell, who rose to high positions in the Trump administration. The integration of women required a revision of many rituals. Some traditional ceremonies, especially those involving nudity, were modified. Separate changing rooms appeared. However, the essence of the rituals, symbolic death and rebirth, remained unchanged. Women went through the same trials, lay in the same coffins, and took the same oaths as men had for generations. Curiously, the ritual names for female members also retained their traditional character, often with mythological references. One of the first women received the nickname, quote, 6, quote, after the Greek goddess of the underworld, which is symbolic for a society obsessed with the theme of death and rebirth. The career trajectories of the first female _7 confirm the effectiveness of the society's networking mechanism. They quickly climbed the career ladder, occupying high positions in government, finance, and international organizations. Studies show that women from Skull and Bones reached leadership positions on average 5 years faster than their colleagues with similar education but without connections in the secret society. Today, 3 decades after the gender revolution, women make up approximately half of the annually admitted members. They are fully integrated into the society's structure and its networking mechanisms. Some of them even hold leadership positions in the organization, defining its development directions and criteria for selecting new members. In the world of America's elite universities, Rarely does an organization evoke as much controversy as the _0 society. However, even this closed club does not exist in a vacuum. For almost 2 centuries, it has interacted with an entire ecosystem of other secret societies, forming a complex network of rivalry and cooperation. Within Yale University itself, _1 is merely first among equals. Its main rivals, the _2 and _3 societies, were founded in the mid-19th century as alternatives to the dominant fraternity. _4, established in 1842, attracts students oriented towards the arts and humanities, while _5 traditionally selects athletes and future industrialists. The rivalry between these societies often takes the form of unspoken competition for the most promising students. Each spring, a veritable _6 unfolds as secret societies track and evaluate potential candidates. Notably, there is an unwritten agreement not to poach students who have already received an invitation from a rival society. Despite the rivalry, Yale's secret societies form a peculiar federation of influence. Their collective impact on the formation of the American elite is difficult to overstate. If Skull and Bones traditionally dominates in politics and intelligence, then Scroll and Key has a stronger presence in law and diplomacy, and Wolf's Head in industry and sports. Outside of Yale, Skull and Bones maintains connections with other elite organizations, from the Bohemian Club in California to the Bilderberg Group in Europe. These relationships are not always formal, but are secured through cross-membership. Many Bonesmen subsequently become members of the Council on Foreign Relations, the Trilateral Commission, and other structures of global governance. The relationship with the Masonic movement is particularly interesting. Although Skull and Bones is not a Masonic lodge in the traditional sense, many of its rituals and symbols have Masonic roots. Some historians argue that the Yale Society was created as an American alternative to European Freemasonry, adapted to the realities of the New World. In the 20th century, a peculiar symbiosis formed between secret societies and new centers of power, think tanks and non-profit foundations. The Rockefeller, Ford, and Carnegie Foundations became platforms where Bonesmen met with graduates of other elite clubs to formulate a long-term strategy for the country's development. This complex ecosystem of elite networks ensures the continuity of power, regardless of changes in political parties at the helm of the state. When Republicans replace Democrats or vice versa, key government positions are often filled by individuals associated with the same secret societies, ensuring the continuity of a certain course. Recent decades have brought new challenges to this system. Globalization and the digital revolution have created alternative paths to power that do not require membership in traditional elite clubs. New tech magnates and financial geniuses often come from universities without traditions of secret societies, which is shifting the balance of power within the American elite. In the 1960s, America was undergoing a period of profound social upheaval. The anti-war movement, the fight for civil rights, the sexual revolution, all of it was shattering the accustomed foundations of society. In this atmosphere of change, secret societies embodying the old order inevitably became targets for criticism. Skull and Bones found itself at the epicenter of this cultural storm. In the spring of 1968, as the Vietnam War reached its peak, the Yale University campus transformed into an arena of protest. Students organized a large-scale demonstration near the tomb. They chanted, "Bone Men Kill," accusing the society of shaping military policy that sent thousands of Americans to their deaths in the jungles of Southeast Asia. These accusations were not groundless. Many architects of the Vietnam War were indeed members of Skull and Bones. McGeorge Bundy, National Security Advisor under Kennedy and Johnson; Averell Harriman, diplomat and mediator in peace negotiations; William Bundy, Assistant Secretary of State for East Asian Affairs. All of them had passed through the rituals of the Yale Society. The Bush family was subjected to particularly fierce criticism. Prescott Bush, a senator and bone man, actively supported military intervention. His son George, a future president, was at the time serving as a naval aviator, which was perceived by protesters as a symbol of the continuity of militaristic policies within the society. The anti-war movement sparked the first serious journalistic investigations into the activities of Skull and Bones. Reporters attempted to infiltrate the tomb, photographed members of the society, and gathered testimonies from former participants. In 1977, Rolling Stone magazine published the first detailed article about the secret society, lifting the veil of secrecy over its rituals. But the true flourishing of conspiracy theories about Skull and Bones came in the 1990s and early 2000s. The advent of the Internet provided a powerful impetus for the dissemination of alternative views on the society's history. Conspiracy theories ranged from relatively plausible to outright fantastical. The most popular theory became that of the, quote, Eight. Allegedly, members of, quote, Nine, along with other secret societies, aimed to establish a global government. Proponents of this version pointed to the disproportionately high representation of, quote, 10, quote, in international organizations such as the UN, IMF, and World Bank. Another common theory linked the society to Nazi Germany through the Union Banking Corporation, whose director was Prescott Bush. It was claimed that the bank financed the Nazi regime even after the U.S. entered the war, and the, quote, 11 Society served as a channel for secret cooperation between American and German elites. A separate category of theories focused on the occult symbolism of the society. The Skull and Bones were interpreted as evidence of a connection to ancient death cults. The society's necropolitical rituals were seen as a continuation of the practices of secret societies of the past, from the Knights Templar to the Bavarian Illuminati. The educational philosophy of Skull and Bones extends far beyond ordinary university learning. It is a holistic system for leader formation, combining intellectual development with the psychological transformation of the individual. At its core lies the concept of chosenness, the belief that certain people are destined to govern society by virtue of their innate qualities, which can be identified and enhanced through special education. The most important principle of this philosophy is the creation of a dual identity. On the one hand, members of the society receive a prestigious Yale education, providing them with formal qualifications. On the other hand, they undergo a parallel course of study in the tomb, where they master informal skills of power, the ability to keep secrets, to recognize their own, and to make complex decisions within a small circle of trusted individuals. The learning process in Skull and Bones is built around weekly gatherings called patriarchies. In these meetings, members of the society discuss philosophical texts, political events, and personal dilemmas. The peculiarity of these discussions is absolute frankness. Within the walls of the tomb, one can and should say what would never be uttered publicly. A central part of the educational program is the so-called life histories. Each member of the society must, over several evenings, recount their life story in detail, hiding nothing. This ritual has a deep psychological meaning. A person who has fully revealed themselves to the group becomes emotionally connected to it for life. The ideological foundation of education in Skull and Bones was formed under the influence of several philosophical traditions. Hegel's German idealism, with its concept of historical progress guided by chosen individuals. Bentham and Mill's English utilitarianism, justifying the actions of the elite for the greatest good for the greatest number of people. William James's American pragmatism, focusing on practical results rather than abstract principles. It is noteworthy that the Society's educational philosophy has changed over time, adapting to new historical conditions. In the 19th century, the emphasis was on classical education and the formation of a gentleman. During the Cold War era, the priority became the training of strategists capable of thinking on a global scale. Today, increasing attention is paid to skills for working in the information society and reputation management. The impact of the Skull and Bones educational model on U.S. public policy is hard to overestimate. Many reforms in the education system were initiated by people who passed through the Yale Society. From the promotion of standardized tests to the creation of elite programs for gifted children, the idea of identifying and cultivating leadership qualities from an early age can be traced everywhere. The Society's influence on foreign policy education is particularly noticeable. Yale University's School of International Relations, established with the active participation of bone men, became a model for similar institutions across the country. Its graduates form the backbone of the U.S. diplomatic corps and intelligence community. The digital age has posed an unprecedented challenge to all secret societies, and Skull and Bones is no exception. In a world where information spreads at the speed of light and privacy becomes increasingly transparent, ancient traditions of secrecy have come under threat. The internet and social media have created a new reality where maintaining secrecy is harder than ever before. The first serious blow to the Society's secrecy was dealt by the publication of Alexandra Robbins' book Secrets of the Tomb in 2002. A former Yale student, she conducted extensive research, gathering testimonies from dozens of former members of the Society. She not only described the initiation rituals in detail, but also exposed the mechanisms of influence of the bone men on American politics. The book became a bestseller and sparked a wave of journalistic investigations. Even more destructive to the tradition of secrecy was the advent of smartphones with cameras. In 2007, the first video recording of an initiation ritual, secretly filmed on a mobile phone, leaked onto the internet. The blurry footage showed figures in hoods standing around a person lying in an improvised coffin. Although the Society immediately denied the authenticity of the recording, the very fact of its appearance indicated that absolute secrecy was no longer possible. In 2009, NBC conducted a journalistic investigation during which reporters managed to film part of the initiation ceremony using a hidden camera. The report showed members of the Society in ritual attire shouting mysterious phrases in Latin. This material caused a real sensation and forced Skull and Bones to revise its security protocols. One of the most high-profile incidents was the leak of information about the Society's financial assets. In 2010, an anonymous source provided journalists with documents revealing the structure of the investment fund RTA Incorporated, which manages the capital of, quote, 4. It turned out that the Society controls assets worth more than $100 million, including real estate, securities, and works of art. In response to these challenges, the Society was forced to adapt. The first step was to tighten security measures in the quote, 5. Electronic device detection systems were installed, and members of the society were prohibited from bringing mobile phones to meetings. All participants in rituals now undergo checks for recording devices. The second direction of adaptation was partial legalization. In 2012, the society officially registered for the first time as a non-profit organization in the state of Connecticut, which allowed it to protect its assets while maintaining membership confidentiality. Tax returns only list the organization's officials, not ordinary members. The most radical change was the transformation of the rituals themselves. The most controversial elements of the ceremonies were modified or completely eliminated. For example, the practice of full nudity during initiation was replaced by a symbolic removal of upper clothing. Some archaic wordings of oaths, containing references to the death penalty for betrayal, were softened. Between myth and reality lies a fine line. When it comes to skull and bones, this line becomes almost imperceptible. After centuries of mystery and speculation, it's time to ask the main question. What is the true influence of this society on American politics? Reality turns out to be more complex than conspiracy theories. Quote 1 is not an omnipotent puppeteer pulling the strings of global politics. It is rather an elite network of mutual support, whose strength lies in creating deep personal connections between future leaders. The society does not dictate political views to its members, but it forms a certain type of thinking, a belief in one's own chosenness and responsibility for the fate of the world. Exploring the histories of Presidents Bush, CIA directors, and financial magnates, we see that membership in the society does not guarantee success. It merely opens doors, through which each must pass independently. Many bone men never reached the pinnacles of power, despite all the advantages of their position. The mythologization of the society serves a dual purpose. For the outside world, the aura of mystery creates an impression of power, causing others to overestimate the influence of skull and bones. For the members themselves, mystical rituals and symbols form a sense of exclusivity, necessary for creating strong bonds of trust. In the 21st century, secret societies face an existential crisis. Digital transparency undermines the very possibility of keeping secrets. The democratization of education blurs the elitism of the Ivy League. Globalization creates new paths to power that do not require traditional connections. The future of skull and bones depends on its ability to adapt. The society has already begun a transformation, admitting women and minorities. But the more fundamental question is whether it can maintain its essence in a world where traditional institutions of power are losing influence. 21st century democratic society is increasingly distrustful of closed elite groups. Americans demand transparency and equal opportunities. In these circumstances, Skull and Bones faces a choice: either further adaptation and greater openness, or a gradual loss of influence. Perhaps the most important question is ethical. Is it permissible in a democratic society for organizations to exist that give an unfair advantage to the chosen few? Or are secret societies a necessary element of social ecology, ensuring the continuity of certain values and traditions? Ultimately, the history of Skull and Bones is the history of America, with its contradictions between elitism and democracy, traditions and innovations, power and responsibility. Whatever path the society chooses in the future, its almost two-century history will remain a unique example of how a small group of people can influence the destiny of an entire nation while remaining in the shadows.